Okie dokie, welcoming back to my show now. It's always a pleasure to invite the main man himself, Ian Donaldson, back on my show. It's been a while, actually. We have him interactive now, live on a video call. Welcome.
Very modern, Danny. It's nice to see you again as well. Thank you.
Nice to see you keeping up with the times. It's quite hard to these days, isn't it?
Especially when you've come from like you were. I was a kid in the '70s, so there was like three or four channels on TV and no mobile phones and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, you've got to try and keep on top of it, haven't you?
Yeah, I know it's iPhone 15 now. I'm still on the 7.8, but it does the job anyway. Cool. How's life treating you today?
I'm good, Danny. I'm really good. I'm happy. Yeah, things are going really well. I've no complaints, honestly. I'm good.
That's really good to hear, especially during these times as well.
What can you do though? I mean, it's you can let this world crush you, can't you? There's always something to find every day that can upset you or disappoint you or hurt you. But what can you do? You know,
Yeah, I guess even in the 80s, you had like, wars going on and conflicts and, financial hardships. It's never changed, does it?
it's true, but they weren't as obvious. Now everything's in real time. Because when something's happening in America or it's happening in Ukraine, whatever it
Mm,
happens to be, you can see that straight away.
yeah.
Whereas it was a delayed reaction, wasn't it? In those days, you got it on the news instead. But now
Yeah.
you're right in the middle. Now you're right in the middle of it. People are actually making the news. They're filming the news and sending it to news reporters as well, news teams.
Yeah.
Change world.
Yeah. It's like so accessible, isn't it? Even with music,
Yeah,
you can just release music just like that, a click of a button.
yeah.
Right, that's that aside, all positive there. There is positive light in the world, even though the nights are drawing in, but won't belong to the summer. I like this part of the year though. You finally completed a new studio album. It's called The Dreams from Tenement Land that you're promoting and plugging. That's exciting for you.
It is. Thank you. That's a couple of years' work to get it to this stage. 12 songs on the CD and 11 on the vinyl because I couldn't fit 12 songs on the vinyl a certain amount of time, needle time. But no, it's going great. A couple of some co-writes as well with some interesting people. One of the songs is called "She Smells Like the Sun," and that was co-written with Andy Gillespie, who played with Simple Minds for about 20 years on keyboards, and a guy called Craig Walker, who lives in Berlin. Um, Alan McGee introduced me to him. He's originally from Dublin, and he was in a band called Power of Dreams in the '90s. So we got into a House on Fire. So four co-writes with him,
Yeah.
and a couple of co-writes with the guy that I record with as well, Gordon McNeil, and the rest are solo. But it's been a fascinating time. It's been good to work with other people, good
Yeah.
people.
I know how hard you worked on this album as well. In the previous interviews, you mentioned Alan McGee. I'm not going to go too much about Oasis, but I do hope Oasis to realise like their roots of how he helped them, get to where they are now.
I probably they do, but I think that's 30 years ago, and they're probably kind of like that's the past. I
Hmm.
mean, I always thought they would get together. I thought the egos were too big and the money
Hmm.
would be too big. But I don't see it lasting for 50 dates or something. I think they'll either
Yeah.
fall out or Liam will lose his voice or he'll fall off a bridge. Or, anything could happen with that lot.
Yeah,
But it's exciting
sure.
times for them.
Yeah. Did you find when you were in a band, you were kind of living in each other pockets for a while?
I think that's inevitable. I think there's no money at the start, and even when you're having some success, there's not a lot of money around either. So you are really, and we had there was a six-piece band altogether in H2O to begin with, and that was difficult. But you're a gang, and
Hmm.
you're a gang against the world, and your songs are the best songs ever, and your band's the best ever,
Yeah.
just like every other band and
Yeah.
every it's made a record. So you learn to live with each other. I think it's a good learning curve for people in general, but also spending a lot of time together can bring out the differences as well, and that's why a lot of bands implode eventually.
Yeah. I guess that was then, this was now. And in our past interviews, if people go on my YouTube channel, Ian Donaldson interviews, I'm sure they can, reference that. We often reminisce about your musical journeys and
Sure.
what have you. Just throwing it back to your album, Dreams from Tenement Land.
Yeah.
Of course, I had to Google what tenement was, but especially in Scotland or the US, you will know this. It's a room or a set of rooms forming a separate residence within a house or block of flats. Is that fair enough, would you say?
That yeah, that's it's generally made out of sandstone, because when blocks of flats nowadays are made out of other materials, but these were all made about the late 19th century. The one I'm living in at the moment is has been up since 1893. So it's got a tenement. It's a tenement, but it's also got a stairwell that leads up, and there's two or three houses off each floor, and you'll see them in American movies as well. But very much Dundee, Edinburgh, Glasgow, that kind of those kind of places. Yeah, and that's where I grew up. I grew up in Govan, which was also tenement land, and it's those. When you look at the front cover of the album, you see my best friend from school, a guy called Titch Riddle, who passed last year, unfortunately. I was hoping that I would finish the
Mm.
record and he would see the front cover. His wife, I've seen it, and his family, they like it. But that's us, 14 years old, 15 years old, in Govan with our lives ahead of us. He was a mad uh, T-Rex fan. I was a mad David Bowie fan, and we had all these conversations, what we were going to do with the world. And it's interesting to see that where we are now, how the last 50 years have panned out. But exciting times, and I think it's my whole story now. It goes from the first track is kind of like punk, goes through glam rock, it goes through
Mm.
electronica, and it ends up with being kind of futurist. So it's my whole kind of life, I feel like, in 12 songs.
That's great. First of all, I have to agree with you, like with the Victorian houses, they do stand the test of time.
They do. They were built to last. That's where I was brought up. They knocked a lot of the old tenements down and built newer houses. But in some areas, they've had to pull those down because they didn't even last 30 or 40
Mm.
years. Um, so it's a bit of a shame, but there's still plenty of them around, and I think they'll be here for another 100 years as well.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. And on to your album now. We're here to talk about Dreams from Tenement Land. You
Yeah.
mentioned your opening track. It's called These Are Days or These Are the Days. Does this reflect what we were talking about, looking back in time, with fond memories?
It does. I don't normally look back, Danny. Whenever we speak, it's always a bit of a kind of surprise when I think about the past because there's just so much to do. I'm already writing songs for the next album, and I'm working on a new book as well. So I'm always kind of looking forward, living in the moment, but looking forward. But
Mm,
yeah, the track is really about hearing punk for the very first time. Glam rock had just been, punk just happened, and it was a really kind of adventurous time. Your bands like the Clash and the Damned, nobody ever seen anything like that before. It was the next kind of youth culture, if you like, and not everybody was involved. That punks were quite rare on the ground when it happened. I remember at times there've only been a dozen of us in any one place, and then it sort of grew. So, and I have never forgot those things. That
mm.
this idea of equality between men and women, like punk girls, punk boys. There was an equality. It wasn't like this is my bird or this is my boyfriend. It was much more kind of uh, there was a kind of real understanding. Everybody had everybody's back because we were a small tribe, but those kind of things never left me. They changed my DNA just as much as
Mm,
David Bowie did. So yeah, that was the start of it. Yeah, that was. I thought we
mm.
need to take care of that side, and then I got into glam. Then there's a couple of glam rock tracks on there as well, and that was a big influence on me too because I was that age. You know,
So on this album, it's fair to say there's something on there for everyone.
there is. Yeah,
That's great.
yeah.
Um, I guess you mentioned like with the youth movements and the mods and the rockers, and then you say the punks, and then you got the new romantics and the goths, and then yeah, it's
And then got baggy, and then you got
yeah,
acid, and it just went on and on.
yeah, it
Like it
did,
should
it
do.
did. And I just going back to my next question for you. With These Other Days, I understand you've released a music video to accompany this. Was that good fun making, putting together?
It was. I made it with a guy called Andy Lenihan at Stage Storm. That's the name of his company. We went into a mausoleum in just outside Hamilton, which is quite close to Glasgow,
Mm,
and it's been up for about a couple of 100 years. And it's just basically like a round tomb. And we did it in the middle of winter. So there's a glass roof. We didn't use any lighting. We just used the passing of the sun, which was quite quick at that time of the year. So we only had a couple of hours, and it just kind of added to the whole kind of atmosphere and the ambience of the whole thing. but the place itself has got one of the longest reverbs in the world. It lasts for 15 seconds. So when Andy was filming and he would say something, it would go, "What?" I couldn't actually hear it.
Mm.
But the funny thing is, if you stand against the wall and he stands against the other wall and you whisper, it just travels right round the building. You can hear it really clearly. So that was all sorts of odd things happened. And I think that comes out in the video as well. It was exciting times.
Yeah. I haven't checked it yet, but that's on my to-do list. We'll get that
Good.
saved. I'll have a look at that later, and of course my listener as well. On to my next track I wanted to talk about, Radio Love. I'm slightly biased on this one because working in radio, you have to like, swing to that. That's track 5, I believe. I like this kind of the sharper, edgier sounds on this one as well.
Radio Love. That was one of the ones I co-wrote with Craig Walker. Um, he actually sent me the a backing track, and he had a lyric with part of that melody. And I said, "Can I write a different lyric?" Because it wasn't kind of reflective of what I would sing about. So I changed it to Radio Love, and yeah, it's kind of bright and brash, and there's a lot when people get to my age when they're making music. Generally, it gets a bit too comfortable and a wee bit kind of soft and a little bit too kind of introspective. Whereas I think there's still a lot of life out there, and there's still a lot of life in me. So
Mm.
I wanted it to be brash and in your face, and uh, talk about a mysterious person and just, push the envelope a little bit. Don't just get on, start wearing slippers and a smoking jacket at this age. Do something a wee bit different.
Yeah, very true. And of course, Mirrorball, you got to include that on your album. That was a no-brainer, isn't it? That's one of your strong tracks.
Still love that. I mean, and maybe
Mm,
you're not supposed to say that about your own music, but I still love that because that
yeah,
was about being 14 or 15 again and listening
yeah.
to glam rock. And I tried to put everything into that again.
Mm.
And that's a big hit. That's a big hit with people that like the record and also the live sessions as well. People really like that song
Yeah.
too.
Would you say that changed your life quite
Glam,
dramatically?
oh, that was the first major change. Seeing David Bowie on Top of the Pops was the first one, and then when glam started to unfold, and you had Mott the Hoople and the Glitter Band and all those fantastic acts, but they were all brilliant songs as well. And that really made me think. I thought I'd like to do this. I don't know what it is, how I start this, but I want a piece of this, whatever it is. Because you've got to remember, Glasgow in those days was really, really grim. It's not like now. I mean, now it's like a cosmopolitan European
Yeah.
city, and it's amazing. But then it was like black and white. There was no Technicolor anywhere apart from Top of the Pops, really, and glam rock. That was one of the reasons why it it it, it worked so well with kids in Britain, because Birmingham, Manchester,
Yeah.
Salford, all the same. All grimy kind of like Victorian cities, and I think it gave us a lot of food for thought and encouraged us to dream a little bit. Like that's what Dreams from Tenement Land is all about. It's about maybe I can do this. Like, I don't know really quite how to do it. It's when it got to punk, it was kind of do it yourself. You didn't have to be able to play very well
Yeah.
or sing very well. As long as you had something to say, that was the most important thing. So glam rock and punk, big big motivators.
I know during the 70s, I wasn't born in the 70s, but looking at pictures of Birmingham, like Concrete and the Bullring,
Yeah,
Wizard
yeah.
were from that area, Spaghetti Junction. During the 1970s, early 1971, I heard on the radio "'Cause I Love You" by Slade.
Oh,
And
brilliant.
I thought, wow, that was such a pioneering song. I had to not Spotify it, when you have an app, Shazam it to see what the song
Yeah,
actually was. And
yes.
I didn't know it was Slade because it sounded like a Beatles song, John Lennon. "'Cause I Love You." That was their first number one.
Do you know that they were great writers? Because there's a lot of acts that and artists, bands, singers, writers that because they happened when glam rock happened, they're seen as novelty acts. But I mean, Slade aren't a novelty act for me. Like David
Mm,
Bowie, Roxy Music. None of those, Mott the Hoople, none of those were. But they came up at a time when that happened. It's a bit like people think that H2O is a new romantic band. We just happened to appear with Dream to Sleep when New Romantics were popular. But I didn't know a New Romantic from a hole in the road.
mm,
We didn't even know what that was. So it's only later that people that's what they call us. But I think in fact, I saw Noel Gallagher the other day. They're saying that Far, Far Away by Slade is one of the best songs ever written. And I kind of tend to agree. and nobody had an amazing voice. So I think that it's a shame that the people look upon that time and those
Yeah.
songs as being a bit frivolous, but they
Because
weren't.
when you look at musical artists, they always have a standout track, but not many people overlook their catalogue, their discography. Of
Yeah.
course, like Slade, their song everybody knows is "Merry Christmas, Everybody." They weren't just a one-trick pony, were they?
No, not at all. They had,
Mm,
I think maybe about 15 top 10 hits, top five hits at the time, along with T-Rex and a few others.
yeah.
Exciting times.
Mm.
Yeah.
Next question I'm going to ask for you. Would you ever be open to releasing a Christmas record? Was that something that has appealed to you, or?
You know, it's a difficult one. Um, I often think about it and I write a few lyrics and have a kind of half melody, and then I don't do anything about it. It would be, it would have to be something a bit unique. It'd have to be something that's not, cheesy,
Mm,
but still attractive at the same time. So that's a difficult one, I think.
mm.
But I'd maybe have a go at it before I pop my clogs. I might have a wee bash at it. Yeah,
Well, maybe it will come to you when you least expect it. Yeah,
that's how the best songs do appear out of the
yeah.
blue.
Yeah. And on to number seven. Well, this is question number seven
Yeah.
on my list. Track nine is The Alchemy of Us. Would you say this song gives the album a Midas touch, literally speaking?
It's that was another backing track that Craig sent me, no lyric, no melody, and I added to it. I come up with a lyric and melody. I wanted it to be a love song, but more of a torch song, a bit more like um, something David Bowie might sing, like "Wild as the Wind" or something like that along those lines.
Mm,
I just didn't want it to be boy meets girl. So the alchemy of us, um, be meaning that and a lot of people didn't know what alchemy meant because it's such an old fashioned word.
mm,
But alchemy, for anybody that's out there that doesn't know it, it's about two people or two things when they combine, they're worth more than they are singularly apart. So the alchemy of us was like love is much stronger when the both of us are together, and it was just a kind of that was a kind of romantic line without being cheesy again.
yeah.
Yeah,
Cool. And I know we've only got a certain amount of time to touch on like several tracks.
sure.
Wanted to talk about Rachel Terrell as well. That's the final track, and mentioned that had a futuristic, vibe about it. Is that the character from the sci-fi futuristic film Blade Runner?
It is well done, 1982 that version. Uh, that's still one of my favorite films, and when you see a lot of science fiction movies or plays or even printed stories, that's the kind of template. What happened with Blade Runner, um, and it really went in like David Bowie. It went in and grabbed a hold of me, and I still watch it regularly. There's like five or six different versions with different endings, and I've collected all of them like a nerd, and I do watch them. But I thought for the final track, I wanted it to be a big love story, but again, a love story that wasn't normal. I wanted to be like Cleopatra and Antony or Romeo and Juliet, but I thought Deckard, played by Harrison Ford, and Rachel Tyrrell, played by Sean Young, she's a replicant, so but she doesn't know she's a replicant. She thinks she's human, and he has to tell her that she's not. But she's been programmed in such a way that she'll live forever. And I just wanted it to be their love story because he falls for her, even though she's a replicant. He falls for her, and the end of the story is a little bit ambiguous about do they get away safely or not. Because he's a Blade Runner, which means he's a policeman that comes in and retires replicants, robots when they've reached they're usually they've got a built-in lifespan of 4 years. So if when they get towards the end of their lives, they can become violent, and he has to retire them. He's like going to hunt them down and kill them, and he doesn't want to kill Rachel. He falls in love with her instead. So it's a big 7 minute epic. That's my yeah. I just feel I felt if that's the last song that I ever record, I'm happy to go down with that one.
Well, that's very interesting. It's been a long time since I've seen that film, so but I might just refamiliarize myself with it. Sounds good. And you mentioned, when you're songwriting, creating music, where do you kind of get your creativity and ideas from? Could it be something simply as a shop, a supermarket, cafe, or even countryside?
It can be anything. It can be, I don't drive, so if I'm on the train, I can hear somebody speaking, they can say something, or I see something in a book, or I'm listening to somebody else's music and they might say a word or a line or I read something. And I just collect all these things. I just write them down, or if I hear a melody, I sing it onto my phone, and I just keep on collecting these things. And when it comes time to write, I just sift through them all. And sometimes there's a question of like piecing things together that maybe are 6 months apart, or put something together and all of a sudden something goes somewhere else and you just act on the spot.
Mm.
But the melody generally comes first. I can usually hear the melody and apply the vocal to that.
Mm.
Whereas a lot of other people will come up with a chord sequence. But I think that's for me that doesn't really work because you can become lazy. You can write a chord sequence and you think, yeah, that's good. I'll make the vocal fit that.
Mm.
Whereas when I sing something, my fingers are all over the piano trying to figure out where it's going, and I have to write down where my fingers are just so I remember what because it's unusual. And then once I've got that bit, then I'll think, well, where else can it go? And then try something strange again. You'll hear that in things like Rachel Tyrell because it's not obvious where it's
Mm.
going anywhere.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's much more exciting.
Yeah. Do you find it harder to write music, or do you find it harder to write the lyrics?
I take a lot of time with the lyric, but musically the melody can come quite quickly.
Mm.
And I think the fine tuning can be the lyric because
Mm.
Moon and June, Cat, Rat, Bat, all that. There's all these things have been done. Higher, Fire, Desire. I mean,
Yeah.
it's. I don't want to do the same thing.
Mm.
Hence, Rachel
Mm.
Tyrell, The Alchemy of Us. I just wanted to do something different, so I will work really hard to try and make it like fresh,
Yeah.
still attractive. To me, I only ever. I know this will sound a little bit strange. I don't write for a market. I don't sit down and think, right, let's write 12 songs and they'll all be smashes because
Mm.
I'll be people. I write for me, but
Mm.
I'm still. But that sounds a little bit uh, masochistic. But I still like to hear something that's attractive and something that's got something to say,
Yeah.
rather than just be kind of like uh, a wee bit obtuse. Just I'll do this because I still want to entertain me. But at the same time, I want it to be fresh, which
Mm.
is why I think that the lyric takes such a long time.
That's a good quality to have, being content, with your art.
I am now. It's taken a long. I'm still a pilgrim. I'm still a student. I'm still learning. I still sing every day. And what I'll do is I'll put on different music sometimes and just see what I can learn from them and kind of add it to what I do. But every day, every time I sit down, it's like the last time. It's like the first time.
Yeah.
Every time I sing "Dream to Sleep," it's like the first time. I think that's what I was made for. Is to make music. I really do. I mean,
Mm.
if I wasn't, I'd probably have had the bank job or the big job and like be sitting playing golf with the guys, with my big pension. But that was never me.
Mm. Next question I'm going to ask for you. I know you write your own music, but do you also enjoy like doing cover versions as well, reinterpreting a song?
I do sometimes. Generally, it'll be a David Bowie song. Sometimes I'll just in the middle of a gig, I'll just start singing something. Like the last time unaccompanied, I did "Cooks" from by David Bowie from an early Bowie album, and people just joined in, or I'll do "Starman" or whatever. But that can be fun. Um, uh, I don't think I'll be recording anything, anytime soon. I,
Mm.
I remember we did "Picture This" by Blondie as well when we were in H2O.
Mm.
So I like to pick that off,
Yeah.
the songs that are not obvious again. But that can be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I know you did a song, was it from the Walker Brothers?
the sun ain't going to shine anymore.
Do you still
Yeah,
do
I
that
did.
one?
I haven't done it for years. But there's a nice story behind that because the guy that produced Blue Diamond, which was the last H2O song, he worked a lot with Scott Walker from the Walker Brothers. And he took my version of The Sun Ain't Gonna Shine No More and took it to Scott Walker and he listened to it and he wrote me a note saying, in typical 60s language, digging your version of the song, Ian. Big love, Scott. And I've still got that.
Wow.
So that was nice.
Yeah.
Um, that was nice.
Make sure you get
Thought it
that
wrote.
framed. Make sure you put that in a
Yeah,
frame.
yeah. It's like everything else. It's in the hall cupboard, like everybody else's. It's in there somewhere, so I will find it one day.
Yeah. Cool. You like the next question? You'll find it interesting. I do karaoke on weekends
Yes.
as my proper job. Speaking about covers, did you know I Dream to Sleep has been given a homemade version on karaoke?
No,
It's actually
really?
been released on karaoke. But I was going to ask
So,
you, have
so
you? Yeah, so
when
on you
when did you find that out?
that,
Was that
that
long?
that that was on YouTube. Someone's put a homemade version
Wow.
on YouTube. Yeah.
Okay, I don't mind that.
And I was just going to ask you, have you ever been in a position where you've been at a gig or just out and about and someone sung one of your songs like H2O, unbeknown to you? Or have you ever been in a room where one of your songs has been played, like say in a shopping precinct? What's that like? Is it quite surreal?
All, all of the above. I mean, I've been in Asda a couple of times, and it's been playing, or I've seen a covers band doing Dream to Sleep. And there's also a couple of times I've actually went up and stood beside the singer when he's singing it, and then just to turn around and realise it's me, and we've kind of duetted a little bit. I've done that a couple of times as well, which is fun. Danny, you know, with H2O, the people say, well, you could have done more. Yeah, we could have done more.
Mm.
But what we did do still stays with people, and there's loads of people that have made many records than I have,
Yeah,
but the songs don't have the same kind of love that mine have. You know, what I mean, when you talk about Dream to Sleep, people talk about that being their favourite 80s tune. I mean, you can't ask for any more than that, you know?
yeah, very
It's
true.
been a,
I know you echoed that in like previous interviews as well. I wanted to ask, being in the music world, have you ever traveled to the States before, like the US? And if so, what was your favorite part of the States? If not, any other parts of the world you've enjoyed traveling to?
well, I toured the States and Canada with a band called Four Good Men. It was a couple of guys from Simple Minds, one of the guys from Big Country, and we had Robbie Williams drummer and a girl Piper, and we toured both coasts, and I really enjoyed that. But um, it was like 14 dates in 15 days, something like that. So I didn't really get a chance to see it. But a couple of years ago, went to New York with my wife and my daughter, and that was an amazing time. I really liked
Wow.
that. I've been all over Britain. I mean, there's loads of parts of the UK I like. We've been to Paris a few times. I like Paris as well. It's a good vibe. Um, a lot of different places, for different reasons. Yeah,
That's fair enough. I know New York's really in at the moment. I
it
was,
is.
yeah.
Everybody wants to go. It's very expensive to be there. Just
Mm.
when you sit down for a coffee and a cake, it's like $100 straight away. I went to Birdland, the jazz club, where Dizzy Gillespie and um, what's her name again now? Lady sings the blues.
Um,
Uh, what's her name again? I forget her name.
oh yeah, we'll come back to
And
her then.
anyway,
Yeah.
so that was kind of interesting. You're sitting in a place that all the jazz greats. I'm not a jazz fan as such, but it was interesting just sitting there having something to eat, watching a great jazz band. So I'm open to new ideas and new music. I'm not afraid to learn.
Yeah.
A lot of people when they get to my age are kind of tribal, so they know what they like and they don't really like much else.
Mm.
But I think it's healthy.
That's good. Just a couple more questions to go back to timeout, but still okay. So you grew up in the circle of some of the biggest Scottish acts to come out from the early 80s. You're in company with like Simple Minds. Do you ever
Yeah,
still like see Jim Kerr of Simple Minds or hear from him, or
I
when was the last time you saw him?
haven't seen Jim and Charlie for a long time. Occasionally bump into a couple of the guys from the Blue Nile, um, and the guys from Gun, and the guys from Hipsway occasionally. I haven't seen Charlene for a long time. Um, it's not. I think it's kind of different nowadays because at one particular time we were all in the same melting pot,
Mm.
trying to do our thing and doing the same circuit and everything. But now most of us are older and we've got families, so you
Mm.
kind of split your time with being a family person and being a musician. So the chance to interact is not as great anymore.
Yeah.
Although occasionally sometimes bump into people at gigs. I saw Robert Hodgins, Bobby Bluebell not so long ago.
Yeah.
I saw Skin from Hipsway not so long ago, but that's once in a blue moon, really.
Mm. As I know, Jim's got a hotel he runs and owns in Sicily, the Villa Angela. he's probably busy with that and family as well.
He has, and I think Charlie's got a room in there, he said. So they've done amazingly well. They're still
Yeah,
making great records as well. It's yeah, I think that there's not enough said about the Simple, and not enough said about the Simple Minds
mm,
and what they've achieved. I think that I think they're a bit like you too. For some people, have gone off the boil, and it takes a while before they kind of surface again,
yeah,
and be kind of this kind of in and out kind of popularity. But they've been making great records for over
yeah,
40 years. I mean, that them, and even the Bay City Rollers, a lot of people, are snide about the Bay City Rollers, but listen, they were the biggest band
yeah,
after the Beatles. You can't
yeah,
ask for more than that.
yeah,
And some of them are still going, some are gone. For being a tiny country, and even mostly the centre of Scotland between Edinburgh, Dundee, and Glasgow, you think of, you know, Ricky Ross, all sorts of people.
mm,
It's I think we just love pop music. I think
yeah.
that's really what it is.
Yeah, impressive. Just one
Mm.
question to go. So, Dreams from Tenement Land is also available on streaming platforms, and of course, you mentioned the limited edition vinyl. Was that high on your list to get that out?
It really was. I mean, it really was. Because vinyl, anyway, Danny, uh, vinyl's really big again. I mean, a lot of record stores in town, it used to be all CDs and just like a small rack of vinyl. It's now completely reversed, and loads of people are putting vinyl out. But yeah, it was, and it's through a company called Last Night from Glasgow, which is a record company based in the West End of Glasgow, and they've got the Skids, they've got the Bluebells, and so on. And they're a great company to work with because they let me make the record I wanted to make, and they distribute it for me. But they were big about vinyl. I mean, there's a new pressing plant in Scotland called Seabass, and they do all the pressing, and it's all coloured stuff. So my albums are really kind of like fluorescent blue, like the early '70s when punk was happening. So yeah, it was a dream come true
Yeah.
again.
Amazing.
Mhm.
Well, I have to leave it there, but I just want to say thank you for coming back on
Oh,
for a catch up. But as always, you'll leave the door open for you to come back,
look,
in the near future. All right then, Ian. Thanks very much for joining me today, and
thanks a lot, Danny.
we'll get one of your tracks from the album played right now for you. Ian
Excellent. Thank
Donaldson.
you, my
Thank
friend.
you.